In the heart of Lagos, under the sweltering heat and endless noise, lived a woman named Mama Nkechi, though once she was simply called Amara. Life hadn't always been this hard for her. Once, she dreamed like every young girl of love, a family, a peaceful home filled with laughter, and for a while, it seemed like her dreams were coming true. Amara met Chuka in her early 20s. He was a charming man, full of big dreams and promises. They married quickly, believing that love alone could conquer the struggles of life. Soon after, Amara gave birth to their first daughter, Ifeoma, and 2 years later, another daughter, Adais. Life was tight, but there was happiness, laughter in the tiny one-room apartment they called home. Then, when Amara was 3 months pregnant with their third child, Chuka changed. He began staying out late, drinking, disappearing for days. The debts piled up, the food ran short, and Amara's body grew frail from the double burden of pregnancy and stress. Then, one night, after a particularly bitter argument, Chuka walked out the door and never returned. Alone, heavily pregnant, with two toddlers clinging to her, Amara wept into the night. She took up menial jobs, washing clothes for neighbors, selling akara at the roadside, cleaning offices at night. Day after day, she labored under the harsh sun and cold rain. She gave birth to her third child, a boy she named Chaisom, in a local midwife's hut, with no one but the midwife and her own bleeding strength to see her through. She lost the baby, the one that kept her moving even when her hands bled and her feet swelled, was for her children to have a better life. She starved herself so they could eat. She sewed their school uniforms by hand. She sat by candlelight, teaching them the alphabets, whispering encouragements through cracked, tired lips. You will be better than me. You will wear shoes that touch marble floors. You will not suffer like this. Amara raised Ifeoma and Adaeze through blood, sweat, and sacrifice. She toiled without rest, carrying heavy loads through the markets, doing anything to feed her daughters and send them to school. She often ate last, sometimes not at all. She wore the same torn wrappers for years while saving every kobo for their education. My daughters must be different, she told herself every night. Her efforts bore fruit, and truly, Ifeoma and Adies were brilliant. Ifeoma won scholarships, becoming a lawyer. Adies, with her quick mind and stubborn will, became a doctor. They rose, and Lagos noticed them. Their names were spoken with admiration. They moved to finer houses, drove fine cars, dined with the wealthy and powerful. But somehow, somewhere along the line, the daughters forgot the woman who once carried them on her back through floodwaters to school. At first, they would send a driver to pick her up to visit them. But in their homes, Amara was not treated as a mother. She was given the smallest, darkest room. She was ordered to sweep, to cook. But they forgot their roots and their mother. Amara became a burden to them, a relic of a past they were desperate to erase. Iveoma, especially, grew cold. She would snap at Amara for the slightest mistakes, speak harshly to her in front of guests. Adays was not as cruel, but she was distant, busy with surgeries and meetings, rarely calling, rarely visiting. Amara spent her days in Ifeoma's house, treated like unpaid help, invisible in her daughter's glittering lives. Her heart broke a little more each time she heard them laugh with friends, but ignore her presence. But mothers love without measure. She said nothing. Whenever she asked for medication, for food, they would sigh loudly, complain to their friends about their useless village mother who was always begging. At social gatherings, they introduced her simply as our house help or a distant relative. Sometimes Amara would sit alone in the kitchen at night, weeping silently. She remembered the nights she had gone without food so our Daisy could have a full lunchbox. She remembered selling her last wrapper so Ivioma could pay for her law school exam. She remembered carrying them both on her back while carrying a baby in her belly through life's many storms. Now all she carried was their disdain. Neighbors noticed. Some pitied her quietly. Some mocked her. whispering that she must have done terrible things in her youth to deserve such fate. One evening, after a particularly harsh tongue lashing from Ifeoma over an improperly ironed shirt, Amara packed a small bag and left her mansion. She wandered the streets of Lagos, a grey scarf tied tightly over her hair, her eyes hollow but dry. She found refuge in a small church near Oyota, where an elderly pastor took pity on her and gave her a room to stay. There, she began to heal, not in wealth, but in dignity. She joined the women's group, she taught Sunday school, and slowly, she found peace in the laughter of little children who clung to her storytelling, in the warm smiles of the old women who respected her wisdom. Years passed. When Ifeoma and Adais heard their mother had moved into a poor church house, they did not come to look for her. They were busy chasing cases, building hospitals, posting photos of luxury vacations online. It was only much later when an important journalist discovered Amara during a charity event and told her story to the world that people began to ask questions. The country was outraged. How could two successful daughters abandon the woman who gave them everything? Shamed and disgraced, Ifeoma and Aldeas came rushing back, but by then it was too late. Amara had built a new family around her, not of blood, but of love. She smiled at her daughters from the church pulpit during a service where she was being honored as Mother of the Year. There was no bitterness in her heart, only a deep, echoing sadness. In her acceptance speech, Amara spoke quietly. Her mother gives everything, not for reward, but for love. If love is not returned, she still loves. But remember, wealth is loud, but her mother's tears are louder in heaven. And with that, Amara, the woman once broken by life, walked off the stage, her back straight, and her head held high. Because even when the world had abandoned her, she had not abandoned herself. Years later, Amara's health began to fail, her body worn down by years of suffering and neglect. She grew weak, coughing blood sometimes, barely able to stand. One rainy morning, Amara collapsed while trying to mop the kitchen floor. The house help found her hours later, cold and barely breathing. She was rushed to the hospital, but it was too late. Her heart, long broken by betrayal, simply gave up. When they called Ifeoma and Adaeze, they came reluctantly, more annoyed at the inconvenience than worried. They arrived just in time to hear the flat beep of the heart monitor as Amara passed. No final words, no chance for forgiveness, just silence. She passed away. Months later, strange things began happening. Ifeoma's prestigious law firm was struck by scandal. She was falsely accused of forging documents set up by a jealous rival and dragged through a public trial. Her name, once spoken with pride, became a curse. Clients fled, friends disappeared. Adaise's downfall was even crueler. A rich patient she had neglected died under suspicious circumstances. She was sued for malpractice. Her license was revoked. No hospital in Lagos would touch her after that. Both daughters, once queens in the city, became beggars of opportunity. Forced to sell their cars, then their houses, they tasted the sharp bitterness of the very suffering they had once denied their mother. And the final blow, neither Ifeoma nor Adaise could bear children. Multiple failed pregnancies, doctors shaking their heads sadly, unexplained miscarriages. They spent sleepless nights wondering if their misfortunes were curses, whether the soul of the woman who had given everything for them had cried out to heaven. Years later, broken and forgotten by society, Ifeoma and Adaise sat under a tree outside the same church their mother used to visit. They had nowhere to go, no money, no power. In their dreams, they heard her voice, soft, tired, and full of love. I labored for you in pain. You rewarded me with shame. Now you too will drink from the cup you poured for me. And so they did, every day, every lonely, endless day. The end